What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls? Joker back again, once again. So let's go ahead and kick this off with some background information, which most of you will likely already know, but it still needs to be said to begin to paint a picture. So E3 2017 hits and BioWare unveils their new IP, Anthem, and it seems to be the best thing since sliced bread. Anyone seems to be in love with it. Except the hardcore BioWare fans. See, for them, this wasn't the return of BioWare foretold on ancient scrolls millennia ago. After their name and company and brand had been dragged through the mud with bad release after bad release after Mass Effect 3 back in 2012. And Anthem looked to be another EA-driven mandate to chase after the coattails of Warframe, Destiny, The Division. After all, if Ubisoft and Activision were going to have a super light MMO-type game, well, why not EA? So BioWare was put on it. Then again, to be completely and utterly fair, at this time we've only seen the gameplay demo, and we have no idea what actually playing the game will look like. In almost every way, Anthem is still an unknown quantity. And just because BioWare has gone and done things like replace the traditional squad of rotating characters that have been, in all honesty, diminishing in terms of quality as far as personality is concerned since Mass Effect 3, with real people, with people that you have to know, with your friends list, maybe hopefully matchmaking, it doesn't mean that they still can't tell an epic story. Just because it hasn't happened yet, doesn't mean it won't ever happen, but perhaps I'm getting a bit ahead of myself and giving BioWare way more credit than I actually should. More so given what BioWare's been willing to put their name on as of late. I mean, let's be honest, when you see the BioWare logo, you don't necessarily know if that means quality anymore. So, even if we don't have this huge quality assurance issue looming over BioWare, tell me if you've heard this song and dance before. A bunch of highly influential people, who are part of the game's core management and development staff, start leaving one by one by one, and the game is pushed back a year. If you got Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 flashbacks, you're most certainly not alone. And then we have, in no particular order, headlines like this. Ex-BioWare dev says Anthem is an example of EA's monetization plans. BioWare General Manager, Anthem Director Aaron Flynn steps down. Anthem is a 10-year journey like Destiny, says EA exec. Mass Effect lead writer Drew Karpyshyn leaves BioWare. Again. Report, BioWare's Anthem delayed as studio doubles down on make-or-break title. Ambitious open-world RPG now coming in 2019. And if those headlines weren't bad enough, some of the things that they say in these articles really paints a rather troubling picture for what's going on in the studios internally. Stating things like, Anthem, BioWare's ambitious action role-playing game, announced at E3 2017, will not come out until 2019, according to a report from Kotaku. Kotaku's report characterizes Anthem's delay as a sign of increasing pressure on the Electronic Arts studio to come back with a big hit following the disappointing performance of Mass Effect Andromeda last year. Unidentified sources connected to the studio told Kotaku that the fall 2018 window was never realistic. Kotaku speculates that BioWare cannot delay the game beyond March 2019, which is when EA's 2019 fiscal year ends. There is a belief that if Anthem doesn't live up to EA's expectations, BioWare will look very different in the future, especially after Andromeda's performance, Kotaku reports. The report says that most of BioWare's attention is now focused on Anthem and away from a Dragon Age reboot and the MMO Star Wars The Old Republic, which launched in 2011. An Electronic Arts representative told Polygon that they did not have any comment on Kotaku's story or the progression of Anthem's development. I can only imagine what kind of environment that must be to work in and day out. Then again, that's not to say BioWare is entirely doomed. Unlike Massive or Bungie, BioWare has a history of story-based RPGs. BioWare also has stepped foot into the MMORPG realm before with Star Wars The Old Republic. If we look at the release content for games like Dragon Age Origins, Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3, Dragon Age Inquisition, it shows that the studio is more than capable with putting out the level of content that games like Destiny wished it had. So on paper, if they could keep up with that kind of content schedule release for Anthem that they did for their other games, we could see the first looter-shooter MMO super light RPG that doesn't have terribly long content droughts. which seems to be endemic of the entire genre. That said, BioWare isn't a company known for tremendously amazing gameplay. Most of the time, in my opinion, the gameplay in BioWare games does exactly what it needs to do. Nothing more, nothing less. And even in Anthem, the shooting didn't seem to be as precise as something like Gears of War.
Hang in there. Almost there. Covering fire. There's a bunch more coming in.
Okay, I'll get this round.
Thanks.
Then again, the person playing could just suck, so what do I know? Now, the reason I bring up gameplay is because it's one of the Old Republic's main issues. Now, to be absolutely positively clear, I've never actually played the Old Republic. However, while doing research for this video, the general consensus that I came across was that the gameplay is outdated, it's clunky. And because of this, or in spite of this, BioWare has moved away from crafting an MMO and fallen back on their ability to tell stories. And they've turned the Old Republic into a story-based multiplayer game that's kind of an MMO, kind of not an MMO, kind of has some of the features of an MMO, but primarily at this point, it's largely a single-player experience that can be played with friends. I wonder if that genre of game sounds familiar to anyone. And in the Old Republic, we see a lot of BioWare's hallmark features. There's dialogue trees, there's a light side and a dark side morality system that does affect the game and things that you can do in the game. There's AI followers, there's romance, there's, like I said, all the boxes you would expect to see checked off from a BioWare game, and would actually be rather interesting if implemented properly in a Division, Destiny, Warframe type of game. Unfortunately, dungeons, raids, public events, basically all the endgame content is, kinda lackluster. And it's not something you'd expect from a game like The Division or Destiny or Warframe, or at least that's what my research on the subject has turned up. That said, Anthem will likely be vastly smaller than the Old Republic, and it's a game that is seeking to compete within the sphere of influence of Destiny, of The Division, of Warframe. And with Destiny 2 being this horrific train wreck that continues to disappoint me in ways that I didn't even know were possible, there seems to be an opening. And it looks like BioWare is very cognizant of this reality. With all of that said, only time will tell, as we've yet to actually see all that much pertaining to Anthem. Right now, however, it doesn't look all that good. BioWare has suffered from many of the same controversies that Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 suffered, and while those games didn't release in the greatest place, Destiny 2 has, like I said, continued to surpass my expectations for just how far rock bottom actually is. BioWare does have a chance to learn from that, and they do have a long and storied history of creating amazing RPGs with lots of content to them, and then supporting those games post-release with a lot of pretty decent content. BioWare also has experienced, whether good or bad, running an MMO. Something companies like Massive, Bungie, and Digital Extremes didn't do before, well, they did. I think one of the main issues, unlike with Bungie, where the studio is largely to blame for the state of the Destiny franchise, Anthem and BioWare's biggest hurdle will not only be how management handles these controversies and these issues, as outlined throughout this video, but it's also going to be how in the way is EA. By and large, BioWare is capable of creating amazing games. The biggest issue, of course, is EA getting the fuck out of the way and letting them do it. There's this thing called brand loyalty, and EA seems to have forgotten that, as it runs studio after studio after studio into the ground, desperately trying to squeeze out what little they can from their diminishing market share. If EA can't get out of the way, then that's why BioWare will die. But again, only time will tell. And so far, EA has at least been willing to give BioWare the time they need. Whether this trend will continue or whether EA will try to push out Anthem by its 2019 fiscal year end remains to be seen. Anthem has the potential to be one of the best things EA and BioWare has put out in years, but only if given what it needs and if it's managed properly. Now, this is just a primer video for the Anthem coverage on this channel, to get everybody up to speed on some, but not all, of the development issues that Anthem has had so far. Going forward, in our next Anthem video, I'm going to talk about what BioWare needs to show at E3 2018, or the next time they show Anthem, in order to win back some of the detractors, and really drive home that even though they're having a lot of the same development issues Bungie did during the development of Destiny 1 and 2, they're not handling them the same way. Anthem needs to win gamer confidence, and not just look cool. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and like always, stay frosty.